For chicken biryani, the first steps are to prepare the ingredients. We're gonna fry some onions for fried onions. We will marinate the chicken for the bottom part of the casserole, and we'll soak the rice. I don't think it really matters how you slice up the onions. What I've seen mostly are small rings or half rings. Okay, with our onion cut up, we can start a pan with about a 1/4 inch of vegetable oil in it. This burner has a pretty high flame. I'll need to watch it carefully. Okay, well that's coming up to take our rice, soak it in the water. I had this Tex-Madi long grain American rice. Not quite the same as real basmati, but pretty close. I soaked 1 cup of rice for the 2 portions that we're having, plus some leftovers. This doesn't need to soak very long. I think 15-20 minutes is what I've heard. It just lets the rice be slightly saturated and will respond better whenever we do finally cook it a little bit. Okay. Onions are coming along nicely. It's going to take quite a while to cook off all that liquid. We want them to be little like crispy onion straws. Alright, so now I'm going to take this chicken, and I'm using boneless, skinless chicken thighs because that's what they had that looked good at the grocery store. Dark meat tends to work better in this dish, but you can also use a whole chicken or just breast meat. What we'll do here is we'll take our dry spices, cumin, garam masala, which is kind of a type of curry paste or curry powder, coriander, and that's like all of that. And salt. In that, we'll mix in. This is probably one of the few, what I'd say is kind of a little bit harder to find ingredients, but it makes this job just a little bit easier, is ginger garlic paste. Many grocery stores, if they have an Indian food aisle, will have this. If not, you can find ginger paste and garlic paste available separately. Or if you have to, you can do it from scratch. I really kind of go heavy on this because I like the flavor that it has. And to that, we'll add, I'm using a low-fat yogurt. Really, any different kind of yogurt will work. I do find that it does add a little bit more richness if there's some fat in there, but you can get away with none. Just taking a look at my onions here. Some of them were starting to brown a little bit on the edges, but they got a long, long way to go. Got our yogurt in there. Set that off to the side. Now, pretty much any marinade that I do, if I have the chance, I'll use a zip top bag to put the marinade in. Just a lot easier to get it coated on the meat. Now, let's see if we can get this chicken into the bag without touching it, so I don't have to go inside and wash my hands. I mean, for our little pan that we're doing this in, I can only fit 3 of these chicken thighs. I'm doing this while camping, just me and my wife, so we're going to make a casserole in this small, I think this is a 9-inch fry pan with lid. So I'm doing a couple things simultaneously just because there's a good bit of prep work. Well, you can think about this as we're making a layered casserole in this pan where the chicken and yogurt and other spices are at the bottom, a layer of fried onions, and then topped with the basmati rice. We'll cook that all together for a short period of time, and then when it has a time for the flavors to meld together, and then you just eat it all on one plate. Okay, onions are coming along nicely. They still got a ways to go though. Let's see, there's a little bit of color. Got to be careful any part doesn't overly burn. Okay. So I think I'm going to add my tomatoes now into. So I'm just going to coarsely dice these tomatoes and add them in with our marinade. You can sometimes put them in the pan separately. It's up to you. The results are good both ways. Okay, let's slide these on to here. And with that, we have pretty much all the prep work done. Normally I'd refrigerate this, but since we're going to be cooking this right away, I think you can put it on the counter here. And then getting ready for the rice cook. one thing that I find interesting about Indian cuisine is the use of whole spices and leaving them in. Whereas in Western cuisine, oftentimes if we had whole spices, we would fish them out prior to serving, which is a little jarring at first because you have to be on the lookout for them, but they do impart a different kind of flavor than their ground up versions. So what I could find in the grocery store and things I had, we're going to use some chilies in both the rice and in the chicken portion. Turn that down a little bit. That's really all the heat because I haven't added really any other forms of heat. So we got our chilies out there. For our whole spices, I have some whole cloves. Be very careful with these because they can impart a very medicinal flavor. I tend to like just 1 or 2 cloves in the entire dish. Bay leaves, not traditional, but they do impart a nice flavor if you don't have curry leaves, which are really hard to find. I have some brown mustard seed that I'm going to use, and green cardamom. Green cardamom is available in pretty much every grocery store, but you'll have to look for it because it won't be prominent, but it's almost everywhere. Be careful with this. Also can impart a very medicinal flavor, but it is definitely part of the dish. Okay, so let's fish our onions out. Get rid of the majority of this oil. Reserve about a tablespoon or so. What we're going to do here is we're going to start some of our whole spices, get their flavors going in here before we add the water for the rice. In here, we're going to start the chicken. We can do these both at about the same time. Rice is coming along nicely. And we'll need to get some water though. Okay. Alright. Let's fire this baby up. Add our whole spices. Again, this is for the rice portion. These guys had a little time to wake up their flavor. Starting to smell like a Indian household in here. So I'm going to crank this way up because we're going to boil the rice. And because we don't want it to be completely done, we're going to remove the rice when it's about 2/3 to 3/4 done. And that will enable us to finish it in the casserole. Now, typically, you know, when we make rice, we add just the right amount of water so that the water is all absorbed by the time it's done. In this case, we cook it more like pasta and bring it out in a colander so that we can then add it into the chicken casserole. So while this is heating up, we're going to start our chicken. So we've got our spices, whole spices. We'll heat them up a little bit in the pan to wake them up a little bit. Then we'll add our chicken, cook it for a little while. I'm going to add a little bit of cilantro, cover it, cook it, and then when it's about done, then we'll add the rice on top cook it for another 8-10 minutes, and then we eat. Stealing a little bit of my leftover onion oil. Looks like about 3 tablespoons. Okay. Nice. Starting to go. Preparation, I'm gonna put a little bit of my cilantro to cook in here. Be the last to add. Doesn't really need to cook over the high heat. Forgot our mustard seeds. I'm looking for the mustard seeds to start to pop a little bit. There we go. Whew. Let that cook. Got a dirty spatula now. Keep that separated from our food. All right. So in summary, we cook this till almost complete. That's our chicken mixture. Cook the rice till about 2/3 to 3/4. Strain it, put it over top, let it finish. I'm going to pause this while this gets ready and we can get the last steps in ready. Okay, let's see how things are going here. Chicken is cooking along nicely. I'm going to lid off of that. Looks like it. I really want it to cook down to a nice thick gravy that's going to be on the bottom. And I've got a little too much liquid here. I think my tomatoes are imparting a little too much liquid. So we'll let that cook down. Our rice water is heated up nicely. I'm going to crank that up. Not that high. Okay. Got our rice soaking. We'll just add it in handful by handful. Now, cooking rice in this way, it should come out such that each grain is separate, not stuck together, and nice and long. Let's see if we did a good job. Crank that up. Get it going. Give our chicken a little stir here. Go, so this is going to be the part of the dish that takes the longest, getting this chicken cooked all the way through. Think about it now where I can put the lid back on. Put it on that, put it off on that. Okay. Now one of the tricks to a good biryani is the rice is just right when it's all done. So that's going to be something that's going to require a little bit of trial and error. But what we're looking for is rice that is about 2/3 to 3/4 done. We'll have to pull out a couple pieces of rice every once in a while and check them out. Alright, while we wait for this, I'm going to prepare one of mine and my wife's favorite side dishes to accompany this, and it's a rieta. Rieta can have a variety of forms, but it is a yogurt dressing that is slightly seasoned. In our case, I'm going to use a couple cherry tomatoes, some salt, cumin, and garam masala in yogurt. And it ends up being a lovely, think of it similar to sour cream on a taco or tzatziki sauce on a gyro. Just adds that little bit of cooling, especially when you have something that's spicy. So here I'm going to try to get these chopped up pretty fine. I think I'll throw some of this cilantro in there too. You really don't want to be eating a big bite of tomato. You just want it to impart a little bit of flavor and a little bit of color. So we make this in a sealable container because we're going to want this when we have our leftovers as well. What's that, about a flat tablespoon of salt? Cumin. You don't want it overly seasoned, but you do want to make sure it's plenty salty. Garam masala, and then we'll drop in our yogurt. I believe in many Indian households, it's typical to make yogurt homemade. It's a little bit runnier that way, which I think makes the dish even better, but we're using the store-bought stuff just out of convenience. Okay. So that'll just sit off to the side until we're ready for it. Let's do a quick test of our rice. I like to think of it as al dente or a little before al dente. Just right. Still a little bit of hard toothy bite that you have to take through it. I'm going to go ahead and strain this. And that'll just rest until we're ready to add it to the casserole. Now, all we've got left is our chicken. Continue cooking. Okay, it's coming along very nicely, but it does have a ways to go. And again, our gravy is still a little too wet. In the end, we want the majority of it to be evaporated or soaked up by the bottom half of the rice in the casserole. Okay, the chicken is coming along good, that's good. I just kind of stabbed through my chicken there to see how it worked. And definitely not done yet, but it's getting there. Let's cut that out. Okay. do like a healthy bunch of fresh cilantro put over top after it's all done cooking. I don't think it's traditional. Oftentimes I've seen mint being used. I'm not sure what's typical in the subcontinent itself. I'm very happy with the smell that is coming off of this. And we need to let this cook a little bit longer though. Let's see how our chicken's doing. Okay. Still a little too wet, but I think it's getting to a nice level of doneness. The tomatoes have pretty much cooked away into a coarse tomato sauce. Chicken is not quite done yet, but cooking along nicely. So the trick to a good biryani is in how you place the rice. So what we'll do here is begin to assemble. I'm going to take 2 hard-cooked eggs, nestle them down in here, add a layer of our fried onions, a little bit of cilantro, and then the trick here is to just fan this over and don't press down. What you want is it evenly layered over top, but not pressed. No, it's just going to fit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this down just a smidge, cover it up, and set a timer for 8 minutes. So 8 minutes has elapsed. Let's see how we're doing here. Looking pretty good. I don't want it to be too runny at the end. See a little bit more liquid than I'd like. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to cut the flame off completely, pull it on, and just let it rest. Now when we're ready to serve it, I'm going to take off the cilantro that was sitting on the top, replace it with a couple new fresh pieces here, sprinkle a little bit of our final fried onions, and then we serve it with a nice raita on the side,